All right, chat. It's time for us to enjoy some ridiculous drama between Briahna Joy Gray. She actually, she's getting into a Twitter. This is basically the entire. This is her entire grift at this point. Imagine being Bernie Sanders' national press secretary and being reduced to this. What a loser. Let us enjoy ourselves. Let us enjoy ourselves by watching this incredible stupidity. This is what we're doing right now, chat. This is what we're doing right now.
Briahna, what's on your radar?
Well, Robbie, you know that meme, the worst person you know just made a great point? Well, yesterday, Republican Iraq war hawk Bill Kristol made an observation that was so not terrible that it actually got co-signed by New York Congresswoman AOC. Not to sound like AOC or something, he tweeted, tagging AOC somewhat thirstily in the tweet. But the degree to which the Republican Party has become a party of performative populism layered over unabashed oligarchy is pretty striking.
Which is an objective fact. The only populism they have is performative. They don't actually care about fucking people in West Virginia or something.
Now, he was specifically referring to the fact that the Republican governor of Montana, Greg Gianforte, has been out of the country while the state endures flooding so extensive that the acting governor signed an executive order declaring a statewide disaster. But Kristol could have been referring to any number of things. Billionaires like Rick Caruso and Michael Bloomberg buying elections, the influence of big moneyed interests on elections post-Citizens United, billionaires like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeffrey Bezos controlling the media, for instance. After all, since the corporate bailouts of the 2008 recession and the Occupy movement that sprung from it, American left populists have been ringing the alarm bell on the fact that democracy is dead. The thing is, though, it's not just the Republican Party that's overtaken by oligarchs. It's our entire two-party system. Now, it doesn't always feel like both parties are equally corrupted. Democrats, on the whole, are more subtle about their attacks on the social safety net, and they tend to use their superficial support for historically marginalized groups as a shield against critique. Hey, they say, at least we're nicer to gays and black folks than the Republicans are. On the other hand, some Republican electeds have been smart enough to pick up on growing frustration among the American public for establishment politics, and they've been making gestures toward embracing a sort of working class.
What? What's the other hand? What other hand? No, they're not. Who? Be specific.
Politics, even if it's mostly rhetoric with very little follow-through. We love working people, they say, as they come up with excuse after excuse not to raise the minimum wage, while rejecting a windfall profit tax on corporations exploiting the oil crisis to make profit. Now, with Democrats doubling down on their courtship of suburban educated elites and relying on a plan to scare minorities into voting blue no matter who, Republicans don't need to do that much to seem like the better alternative to millions of voters who previously identified as Democrats or independents. After all, it seems obvious to most folks not named Joe Biden that the system is broken, and no one likes to be gaslit. We know the system is broken because a full-time minimum wage salary can't get a worker a one-bedroom rental in 93% of counties nationwide. And two bedrooms 100%. Are completely off the table.
That's an old stat.
And since the average minimum wage worker is a 35-year-old white woman and 28% of minimum wage workers have children, low wages represent a real threat to the American family. We know the system is broken because in 2020, a CEO earned 351 times more than the typical worker. In 1965, it was just 15 to 1. CEO pay has grown at 940%, while worker pay has only risen 12% during that time.
Her stats
we know the system is broken because in 1980, the average cost of a 4-year college degree was a little over $10,000. It's 3 times that now. And adjusting for inflation doesn't solve the problem. Average college tuition and fees have increased by 1,200% since 1980. Inflation's just up 236%. We know the system is broken because a Princeton study proved way back in 2014 that America is not a democracy at all. It's an oligarchy.
Study. I give her that.
Why do I say that? What does that mean? Well, what the people want has an almost zero effect on what our democratically elected officials actually do. Per the study, a proposed policy change with low support among economically elite Americans is adopted only about 18% of the time, while a proposed change with high support among elite Americans is adopted about 45% of the time. In other words, when rich people want something, they get it. When poor or working class people want something, they're SOL. But enough with the doom and gloom. I don't have to belabor the bleak statistics. You're living them. Maybe you're a 40-year-old millennial who's never owned a home. Only 43% of us are homeowners after all, compared to nearly 80% of baby boomers. Or maybe you're a senior on a fixed income concerned about Biden's plan to hike Medicare premiums right before midterms. The point is that Kristol is onto something. The Republican Party is performative populism covering for unabashed oligarchy. What both he and AOC fail to say, though, is that it's not just Republicans. It is crucial that people who understand that establishment politics are broken.
Democratic establishment politicians are not performatively populist at all. I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. They're not performatively populist. They are elitists. They say the system is good. Filibuster is good. Compromise and bipartisanship is good. They are not populists. They're anti-populist. Joe Biden is anti-populist. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. The only people that are populist are legitimately progressive politicians on the left. And there's performative populism on the right. There's not performative populism in the Democratic establishment. Well, so who are you talking about?
Broken, not pull punches when it comes to holding one side or the other accountable. It might be Lindsey Graham trying to cut Social Security and Medicare this week, but as David Sirota pointed out in The Lever, a dozen years ago, Barack Obama and Vice President Biden held a ceremony at the White House to announce a commission to try to slash Social Security and Medicare, but for a sustained campaign led by Bernie Sanders, which included a threat to primary Barack Obama, Democrats might have succeeded. Too often, efforts to make life harder for working people are bipartisan efforts, and partisan sniping allows establishment politicians to pass off blame like a hot potato, while no one is ever held accountable. Is Biden doing enough to address inflation? No. But are Republicans offering a viable solution? Also no. Moreover, those of us in the media who are willing to point this out are often attacked by establishment punditry, accused of being in the tank for the other side, even as our criticisms are bipartisan. Wanting to hold Biden accountable to his campaign promises might get you called the Candace Owens of the left, at least if you're black. Explaining why Tucker Carlson is appealing to so many viewers recently caused the co-founder of a popular left media site to accuse me of not being a leftist at all yesterday.
The mainstream media is disgusting in how they shut out progressives. In terms of the right wing, no. Briahna Joy Gray, unfortunately, is one of the people that are in the fake left. And so this has become a whole niche part of the industry. So Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, Briahna Joy Gray, and a couple of others in there.
Oh, well, here's the thing. I don't care what you call me. A leftist, a fake leftist, a progressive, left populist.
Now, I will remind you, chat, that Briahna Joy Gray blocked me because she said, I never read any Marx, hee hee. And I was like, it just seemed too hard. I was like, are you kidding? It's not hard at all. What are you talking about? How dare you? She blocked me because I was like, wow, it's not that hard to read. You're embarrassing. Goddamn, dude.
An independent, a socialist. I've used most of those labels at some point or another. What's important is less how you define folks,
non-Marxist
and that we
socialist.
all collectively keep our eye on the following. Where do elected officials get their money? Who's paying them? Are media figures merely critics, or are they offering affirmative solutions to the real problems Americans across the political spectrum have identified? Are excuses like, how do you pay for it, leveraged evenly, or only when it comes to helping out American workers, not when it comes to bailing out banks or funding regime change wars? Do all the reasons floated?
See, the reason why she's called a fake progressive is all the politicians who bring up these very issues, she attacks. She attacks AOC. She attacks Cori Bush. She attacks Ilhan Omar. She attacks those people. And it's like, why haven't you fixed it? It's like, we don't have enough members of the squad. We don't have the power. And you know, they're like, well, you could have blocked Nancy Pelosi from being Speaker of the House to force the vote on Medicare for all. And so she basically said AOC can't be trusted because she didn't do this thing Jimmy Dore made up 5 minutes ago. That's why you're a fake leftist, because you attack the people that have the politics you say you support over bullshit.
For why a middle-class life is inaccessible today makes sense in light of the fact that just 50 years ago, our country was structured differently. Taxes on the rich were higher.
Holding politicians accountable bad. Holding politicians accountable good. Holding politicians accountable for your dumbass, half-baked legislative strategy come up from a guy who doesn't understand how the fucking, how many senators there are. Stupid. Fomenting internal left-wing fights over dumbass shit that you tweeted so that you get attention. Yeah, that's bad. Holding people accountable, good.
Spending was higher, unionization was higher, and the middle class was living easier. Could it be that the people telling you things can't get better are self-serving, regardless of whether there is an R or a D behind their names? It is imperative that
this is like one of those things where I agree with like 99% of the content here, but it's meaningless unless this is the type of shit that doesn't matter. If you're not anchoring it in actual politics, and that means real flesh and blood politicians, real flesh and blood movements, if you don't take a risk of supporting someone who might disappoint you, none of this matters. It's academic at best. You have to support actual humans. That's the difference between me and someone like Briahna Joy Gray. Briahna Joy Gray is never going to, she's going to try to hold herself above politics so that she can make money.
Talking to each other, that we not go into our respective silos, and that we treat everyone who, not treat everyone who disagrees with us as a mortal enemy, as some of my colleagues in left.
So in other words, have a strong Republican Party, right, Briahna? How are you any different than Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi? They are our mortal enemies. I know if you're a rich, Harvard-educated lawyer who worked for a huge big law, maybe you don't see Republicans as mortal enemies, but they are. And what's wrong with American politics is there's not enough Democrats who believe that. Republicans believe Democrats are spawns of Satan. There's not enough Democrats fighting back. It's class war. That's why you're not a socialist. You don't believe in class struggle.
I recommend. When we do that, we stop being a community. We stop being an American people. We've already lost our democracy.
What is this liberal shit? What is this liberal shit? Americanism, American identity is a spook. It's fake. The only thing that matters is class struggle.
According to the fellas at Princeton. If we completely lose our sense of belonging to an American community that can communicate with each other, that strives to be better together, what's left? This isn't a left-right conflict we're in, it's a top-down one. More and more people are realizing.
That's what left-right means! Right means hierarchy. Right means tradition. Right means militarism. Right means a police state. Right means minorities are in their place. That's what left-right means. Now, people don't know that because you and people like you obscure that fact. There's nobody on the right that's fighting for the bottom. It's an oxymoron. You can't.
This, and that's something to be hopeful about. The trick now is to not let bad faith actors exploit this sincere desire for working class politics and use it to deliver more of the same.
Working class politics is left-wing politics. If you don't support left-wing politics, you don't support working class politics. Now, that's reality, folks.
So I did this because I felt as though...
You're a fake leftist. You have to vacate that chair for someone else.
I know.
Dan, thanks for the 18 months.
They get trotted out as I've observed them every time there is someone who is even making an attempt to understand the other side, to dialogue with the other side, and to come with solutions, and to be willing to be critical of one's own party.
You're Joe Manchin. You're Joe Manchin. That's Joe Manchin. How is this any different than Joe motherfucking Manchin or Joe Biden? That's their same politics. Incredible brain. How do you explain working class conservatives? People that are they're confused by false consciousness. There's always going to be people that worked against their interests for a variety of identity reasons. People are identity animals. And what we do politically is determined by our operative identity.
That's what sets people up. That's what sets the Soledad O'Briens of the world.
What's the dialogue the right wing is giving the left? You fucking idiot. They're calling gay people groomers. They're trying to take away Disney's tax exemption because they had a gay couple in a Pixar film. Not doing sex stuff, just a family with two moms. What are you talking about?
Off, not anything substantively I've said, because they never talk about anything specific. It's the idea.
I just said that you have Joe Manchin politics. I just said that you are advancing Joe Manchin politics because you're not. There is no alliance to be had with the far right. There is none. You are just giving credence to the far right. Incredible small brain.
That by even being in dialogue with other people, you are somehow, by definition, throwing your own community and interests under the bus.
Well, I mean, the thing about this, like, this crying about dialogue shit is, did she give me an example of constructive dialogue that she's had with the right that's actually accomplished a goddamn thing? Give me one example. Give me one example.
Yeah, our Rising Fridays co-host Ryan Grimm had a great article in The Intercept this week about the kind of struggle session mindset that prevails in some of these progressive activists.
Oh, and then a right-winger comes in to trash the left. What a surprise!
That's like...
Now, he's not criticizing the right. He's not criticizing anything about the right. He just jumps in to criticize the left. What a fucking surprise! What a good dialogue. We could dialogue with the right about how bad the left is.
Caricature, of what someone on my side would say is going on, and then you really go, oh, there's a lot of that going on, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem is that it's elite capture.
Yeah.
It's these people at these institutions. It's not what I think is a broader, authentic left movement. It's these, kids at Oberlin or whatever who are populating a lot of these left groups and these media institutions that have elite interests because they are elites, and they are co-opting the priorities of the identity groups that they might technically belong to, but they don't have the same interests as those groups. So, affluent, Black people on TV or affluent LGBT people on TV focus the conversation toward things that aren't the immediate interest of working class people in all of those groups. And I talk about this with Pascal Robert actually on my podcast today, who he gets into the...
So what we've officially done is we've segued from progressive groups to rich Black people on TV. She just tried to equivocate those two things, which are not the same, you fucking worthless grifter. You lying sack of shit. That's why class struggle is so important.
History of how movements have been co-opted in exactly
Education
that way.
doesn't make you an elite. Having capital makes you an elite. If you're a leftist chat, you'd understand that well-educated people have always been an important part of the vanguard of the left. Well-educated people who were able to critique the system intellectually have always been part of it, have always been an important part of the leadership of the left. This is actually what we just need to have only McDonald's workers or it's not a real left is an absolute dumb take. The McDonald's workers are going to have a ton of really important leaders that we should elevate. We need to have more working class leaders. One of the things I talk about is we don't have enough rank and file union leaders stepping into politics and running for office. That's a major downside. But elite capture doesn't mean you had an education. Mao, I mean like Lenin, Marx, Bernie. These are all educated people.
And how identity oftentimes collapses the real meaningful differences, class differences between the people who are advocating for these groups at the top and what's really going on down on the streets.
Yeah, the effect is pretty clear at this point that working class people feel a declining affinity for the Democratic Party. They're increasingly being captured by the Republican Party, which, you know, from your perspective...
Is that based on class struggle? Is that based on them making economic concessions? No, it's based on racial politics. They're engaging in the same politics that you're condemning for those so-called progressive elites. They're doing racial politics. They're not giving class concessions to working class people.
It should not happen given the relative positions of the parties.
What a loser, dude.
And I mean, it speaks to, I know we've talked about this a lot, but it just is the effect, right? That the many working class people feel that they don't trust the Democratic Party, or they've overreached on cultural issues, or they don't trust what their policies are for taking care of their families or whatever it is, and that's a huge problem for the Democratic Party, because then it's becoming increasingly reliant on the affluent white liberals.
And that's by choice.
Right.
That's by choice. They've chosen not to respond.
What the fuck are you talking about? You talked about Cenk, and then you're starting to talk about Democratic Party elites, and then you're equivocating Democratic Party elites with people working at March for Our Lives. She just smears the entire left with the Democratic Party elites, and then her solution is dialogue with the right, like Joe fucking Manchin. This is totally incoherent.
Respect their base. They've chosen to write them off as stupid rubes who don't know better.
And none of us like the policies of affluent white liberals. Nobody does. Nobody does. It's the most uniting thing of all.
And they don't trust that if they were actually just to deliver, that they could actually best Republicans on some of these culture issues. And then meanwhile, the bar is so low that Republicans can get away with performatively signaling populist politics.
And they can get away with massively overreaching on their response to culture issues that some of their zanier, crazier people in their base want, because right now the Democratic Party is so screwed they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And that will be horrifying. Well, we'll have more Rising right after
Cosmopolitan boy doesn't want to live in the Republican world he's helped create. All right, let's watch the other side of this drama.
Cenk is currently engaging in a little bit of a beef with Glenn Greenwald, who he accurately described as someone who's not really on the left. And he did.
Has Glenn ever claimed to be on the left? Has Glenn ever claimed to be on the left in his entire career? As far as I know, he got started defending Nazis. That was started his career. What was his leftism exactly?
Did so in an interview on Mediaite's podcast. Let's take a look at what Cenk had to say, and then we'll go to a very triggered Glenn Greenwald.
Mainstream media is disgusting in how they shut out progressives. In terms of the right wing, no. Briahna Joy Gray, unfortunately, is one of the people that are in the fake left. And so this has become a whole niche part of the industry. So Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, Briahna Joy Gray, and a couple of others in there that are, to be fair to Dave Rubin, he started this whole thing. The fake left saying, "Oh, well, I'm a classical liberal, I'm a progressive, but it turns out the right wing's right about everything." Okay, so that's the shtick that they do, and they go on Tucker's show and they dance for him, and so it's disgusting. They're not the real left, and here's how you can tell: they never disagree with Tucker.
And the Tucker element
so all
of
they have to show is times they were disagreeing with Tucker. It's very easy to prove Cenk wrong. Just show all the times you were disagreeing with Tucker.
That is just so demonstrably true, and we'll show you in just a second. But Glenn Greenwald gets triggered anytime anyone critiques his appearances on Tucker Carlson. So he responds with, "The nation's single dumbest pundit." Let's pause for a second. Is Glenn Greenwald not the guy who referred to Tucker Carlson as a socialist? Maybe sit this one out, homeboy, but let me continue. The nation's single dumbest pundit, and I mean that literally and earnestly. There may be people more malicious, but there's simply nobody more stupid, more cognitively dense, decrees that Bernie Sanders, 2020 press secretary, is part of the fake left.
Okay, just because someone worked for Bernie Sanders for their career doesn't mean that they can't be dumb or go to the right. I draw your attention to Bernie Sanders' 2016 press secretary, Simone Sanders, who went to the right and was working for fucking Joe Biden campaign and then became a press secretary for who? Vice President Kamala Harris. What are you? It happens all the time. So what?
Okay, so let me jump in now on a couple of things. So I just saw that tweet, by the way. He's to me, he's not so relevant. I hadn't even bothered to look at him attacking me. And so every once in a while he pokes enough that I have to, correct him. So in this case, who else from the Bernie campaign is still talking to Briahna Joy Gray? So is it possible that someone from the left would then not be on the left later when they see that there's money to be made from right-wing viewers? So that never occurred to you, Glenn? That happened to you, Glenn. How could it not have occurred to you? And so he says that I'm dumb, that I'm a dumb pundit. Well, that's interesting because as you're going to see later in the story, Glenn and I used to agree on almost everything. When we were both progressives who criticized Democrats and Republicans, so does that make you the world's dumbest pundit, Glenn? Were you super dumb before? And over the last 2 years, as you become Tucker Carlson's best friend and kissed his ass on a weekly basis and ingratiated yourself in humiliating fashion to the right wing, did you become smarter? All of a sudden losing your progressive ideas and principles made you smarter? Is that what happened, Glenn? So you tell me. I mean, you said that I'm not intelligent and you and I agreed completely before. What happened?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just have to email TYT to go
This
on.
is sophistry. And what it is it's an attempt to trick his new audience, which are honestly less intelligent. The right wing, they'll believe anything, right? So he's like, oh yeah, if you worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign, that means you never change your opinion later. And the right wing's like, yeah, that's right, that's so true. Oh, Glenn Greenwald used to be a progressive. And look at that, he says everything the right wing does is true now and correct, and they're godly and heavenly. It must be true, it must be true, okay? No, it isn't true, it's a trick.
Yeah, look, you triggered him because what you said is demonstrably true. And he hates when anyone critiques his appearances on his daddy's Fox News program. But look, just to answer your question, after he had made a career and a name for himself defending literal Nazis as a lawyer, he engaged in this like LARPing persona as a progressive. But in reality, I think he's always been questionable, and unfortunately, I didn't know about his past and I didn't know what he really stood for. He's not any type of intelligent political thinker. He just goes where he thinks the popularity is or where the money is. And
well, The Intercept was like really, really great, and The Intercept is still really good. And he was part of that, and so that gave him a lot of credibility with people. But once he left The Intercept, because they canceled him for not wanting to publish a major deep dive into Hunter Biden's laptop, and they were like, "This isn't really newsworthy and it's boring." And the story has been done ad nauseum. I think it was like a week before the election that he self-canceled himself.
About to demonstrate that right now. Now, later, Greenwald posted this old clip of Cenk, again, very old clip of Cenk with the caption, "Thank you, Cenk," and it's what you were referring to. Let's take a look.
Glenn Greenwald, he, I believe, is really the Noam Chomsky of our generation. I know that's strong words, but I think he's really earned it time and time again, pointing out the hypocrisy of the government, the media, being absolutely fearless about it, and some of just the best reporting there is literally in the world, if you ask me.
So Glenn tweeted that old praise toward him by Cenk, and Cenk responded with, "No problem, I absolutely meant it. That's why it's so heartbreaking to see what you've become now. To be a shadow of your former self being used as a convenient prop by the right wing is so sad to watch. I'm being serious, you were better than this. Jesus, have some self-respect." Well, he doesn't have self-respect, and as look, this is a perfect tweet demonstrating exactly what Cenk was referring to. They didn't even wait. They didn't even wait 1 day to prove Cenk correct. And it's 2 screenshots of tweets from Glenn Greenwald. "I spoke last night on Fox about the extraordinary win by Mayra Flores, 2022, I think."
What? He went on Tucker Tucker to celebrate the fucking Republican winning on the border district? What? What the fuck? How is that anything but being a right-wing loser?
A nurse married to a Border Patrol agent who is now the first Mexico-born congresswoman in U.S. history, flipping an overwhelmingly Latino district, which in 2016 went to Hillary plus 16 points, red. So he's on Tucker Carlson's show to celebrate a congressional win by someone who flipped a typically blue district to red.
Yeah, I've got thoughts on that, but show Jimmy's too, and then I want to break it down.
Yeah, so let's look at that.
What the hell is happening?
The great Jimmy Dore segment on Tucker Carlson tonight, calling out Joe Biden for blaming every disaster here at home on Putin.
Yeah, so that's not a tweet by Glenn, but it shows both. So the news broke that I said that they were the fake left. The very next day, both of them go on Tucker Carlson and insert themselves right in between his cheeks. And they never disagreed, never. You've got a fascist right-winger in Tucker Carlson and a progressive on the left can't find a way to disagree with Tucker Carlson. How about the replacement theory? How about that one? How about a billion things he says that's mental and massively right-wing? They're like, oh no, but Joe Tucker, you're so right about Myra Flores. You're so right about Latinos. They're no good Democrats. So no, they're bad. All Latinos should vote for Republicans. You're so right, Tucker. You're so right, Tucker. Where's the money, Tucker? All right, and then Jimmy goes on, and what did he say? Oh, you're so right about everything else in the world. They're blaming it on Putin. Russia's not wrong, Tucker. You're right, Tucker. Russia's great. America's bad. Oh yeah, it's all the Democrats' fault. It's the most.
No, they would never say America bad because that would be against Tucker's. They don't have the fortitude to go on there and say America bad. They go on there to say Biden is bad to boost the Republicans and to say inflation is Joe Biden's fault to boost the Republicans. They don't go on there and say something as fucking intellectually honest as America bad. No. Get out of here.
Obvious thing in the world. You get a couple of patsies who have no morals, who have no principles or decency, and you get them to dance for you. Hey, Glenn, show me you disagreeing with Tucker. Show me you having a debate with Tucker. Show me you having a fight with Tucker. Jimmy, you're pathetic. I don't even need to discuss Jimmy. Look, there is something I slightly disagree with Anna on, which is that I think Glenn is smart, okay? That's why I'm more disappointed in him. I think he was principled, even on the positions I disagree with him on. We had a debate now over 10 years ago where I moderated on the Young Turks, Glenn Greenwald versus Larry Lessig. Larry Lessig's a Harvard law professor, a godfather of the campaign finance movement. It was a really interesting debate. And Glenn Greenwald said, no, we should keep money in politics. Okay, that's an interesting point of view, but
What a surprise! Did the libertarian want to have unlimited money in politics?
I thought that he meant it. And I think he's a smart guy. I think the Jimmys and the Rubens of the world are pathetic, totally pathetic. They'll do anything for money, and they're not at all smart, right? But Glenn knows better. That's why it's disgusting when he dances for them. So show me all of your big critiques of Republicans. Guys, it's so easy to tell who's honest and who's not. We criticize both Republicans and Democrats. They only criticize Democrats and progressives and leave the right-wing Republicans alone. Now, I guarantee you as a response to this that Glenn Greenwald will find a tiny little smidge where he criticized the right wing, a tiny little smidge when he criticized Republicans in the ocean of his content and go, what? I did it once or twice, kind of.
No, where? I mean, he hasn't even done that.
I haven't seen it, though.
He hasn't even done that.
Yeah, he hasn't even bothered to do that yet. So in the middle of them trying to do a fascist.
Jimmy Dore used to be a member of TYT because he was an LA-based comedian who had progressive views, and he was brought on TYT as kind of like comic relief, as color, and to make jokes, basically to raise the entertainment level. Because the thing about being a leftist content creator is, if you're like me, I'm a straight guy in the sense that I tell you the facts, I get pissed off, right? I'm not cracking jokes all the time. I do occasionally. I try to lift the mood once in a while. We have our memes and we have fun sometimes, but for the most part, I'm straight ahead telling you the news, educating you. It could be a bit of a slog from time to time. It could be a little bit much. You could feel black-pilled or depressed. because there's not enough levity. So you have a color person, you have a second chair or a third chair, somebody to make jokes, somebody to lighten the mood, somebody to keep us smiling, even though what we're dealing with sucks. So you try to bring on funny people. It helps, the medicine goes down. Sugar, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, so to speak. The problem is these people, like Jimmy Dore, start to get delusions of grandeur, where now they suddenly think they're smart and a genius pundit. That's what happened. And then he just went where the money was. He just went where the algorithm is. Okay? That's it.
Coup, Glenn, where they were chanting "Hang Mike Pence" and Trump was encouraging it, and they were going to destroy our democracy. You couldn't find a way to criticize Republicans? You couldn't find a way to criticize Trump or Tucker Carlson? You couldn't find a way. No, that's what proves you're fundamentally dishonest.
Yeah. Look, at this point, I think it's so abundantly clear where these people stand politically that, like, no one on the left genuinely looks at them and thinks like, oh, no, they're part of us. Like our group, our political ideology, they just come across as right-wing cranks, either chasing the money or possibly trying to hide something. I don't know. I keep thinking back at the fact that Peter Thiel and his company specifically spied on Glenn Greenwald. It was a huge story. And now all of a sudden, Glenn Greenwald carries water for Peter Thiel and literally works for a company that is heavily invested in by Peter Thiel. What did Peter Thiel find about you, and what are you hiding? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. I don't care. All I care about is...
I care a lot.
Yeah, well, I hear you on that. So that's for journalists to figure out. But I do know the results. There's no question about the results. You used to hold the government accountable. You used to hold both parties accountable. Now all of a sudden, you don't. The Republicans are untouchable. The right wing are heavenly, and so your dishonesty is disgusting. And finally, what actually made me mad was this guy from Third Way jumps in here. Let's show that tweet, okay? And so it's Matt Bennett, and he says, "This is lunacy and Glenn Greenwald is horrible, but my more fundamental question is, why does Cenk Uygur get to call himself a young Turk at age 52?
Got him, got him.
Whatever, I don't care about that. But the reason, Third Way's corporate Democrats, they get money from corporations and then they use it to corrupt the Democratic Party. They're the worst of the worst. But he saw that video from a decade ago and he's like, perfect opportunity. I'll put in all progressives in the bucket of Glenn Greenwald and the sellouts, so that when you hear a progressive critique of corporate Democrats, which is the great majority of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden and Pelosi and Schumer, you will dismiss it as if it's from the fake left, the guys who sold out to Tucker Carlson, like Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore. No, you don't get to play that trick. No, the progressive critique of the Democratic Party is excellent. You guys are sellouts. You take corporate money from people like Matt Bennett day in and day out, and you sell out your own voters. It's disgusting. But it's possible to say that.
Isn't Third Way a moniker Nazis use? Yes, actually. Third Way is traditionally a reference to fascism. Third Way is a political position akin to centrism that attempts to reconcile right-wing and left-wing politics. Now this is hold on. Let me see if it's used to fascism. This is interesting. They've added, wow, they've tried to Third Way. Let me see if I can find it. Third position. There you go. That's what it is. Third position.
Say the Republicans are doing terrible things and prove both. When you see anyone only taking one side and telling you how wonderful and amazing Democrats are, know that they're not telling you the truth, which, by the way, is the great majority of the mainstream media. Or you see others taking only the Republican side and never telling you what their faults are, Tucker Carlson, Glenn Greenwald, etc. Know that they are not telling you the truth. We actually cover the real news, and both parties make terrible mistakes and largely serve the elites and the upper class. Now Glenn and Jimmy and those guys are their servants, and it's pathetic. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships.
I think that right there is pretty much exactly what you need to know. Is there's just so many fucking people that suck shit on the left, and these fake leftists. Ugh. Are you watching the stream unsubbed? You're making income inequality worse. You are doing anti-praxis. We are the only Twitch stream that will not accept scam advertisers, and I will never fuck you over by selling you crap.